Oh boy. Greetings, good humans, and welcome to Tabletop Alchemy, where sometimes your host is sick. Ow. And the host's cat scratches him in the face. What are you doing? I'm really sorry, everybody, that you have to hear and see me like this. As you can tell, I'm a little under the weather. I just got finished with like 11 straight days of 12 to 14 hour days on a independent film shoot, and apparently that took its toll. Towards the end there, I started to feel I was like, am I getting sick? I don't know. This is a weird one too. I kind of feel like half sick, but I'm kind of out of it. And I can't make a good product for you today. So what I thought I would do as a pinch hit move here is I went and dug into my archives. About 6 years ago, I produced a 28 episode podcast that was tabletop hobby oriented. It was the first iteration of Tabletop Alchemy. It was podcast, so there's no video. But during the course of those 28 episodes, I actually interviewed a handful of very interesting people that have kind of kept getting bigger in the gaming industry, actually. So I have a couple of old interviews that are pretty interesting. Anyway, so I thought today, just to give you guys something to put on in the background, literally because this is going to be a podcast. There's no visuals for it, but I interviewed somebody pretty special, and I thought I would just replay that here for you guys. But happy Thanksgiving to those of you that are in the States. And to those of you that are not, you can enjoy this. This has got to be over an hour long podcast interview with the tabletop gaming famous Vince Venturella. So again, let me stress, this is a 6-year-old interview. This is literally almost 6 years to the day that I recorded this. It was back in November of 2019. And since then, Vince has gone on to, now he writes his own games, tabletop skirmish games with, Uncle Adam from Tabletop Minions. And he does several different podcasts now, where he used to only do the one back when I interviewed him. But we talk about, I specifically, when I interviewed him back then, I wanted to talk to him about his passion for Dungeons and Dragons, as opposed to all of his miniature painting stuff and his tabletop wargaming stuff. So, that interests you. Here's an hour-long podcast for you to hang out and listen to Vince and I chat about D&D. I hope this is a worthy pinch hit video, and hopefully I will be able to get back to regular content next week. We will see, and fingers crossed, and drinking orange juice and all that good stuff. So, have a great week, guys. I'll see you when I see you.
It's an awesome conversation. We talk about movies and books, oysters, running D&D marathons, how being fired from his first job had a significant impact on his life. We discuss genre mixing, RPG horror campaigns while playing adolescent characters, writing and publishing his own games, mind-blowing collaborative character creation rules, pump up the volume, being a positive force in the hobby at large, loving the act of teaching, and just loving the communal artistic hobby we all share, and all kinds of other stuff. He is truly an awesome individual, a generous person, and a wonderful conversationist. Conversationist? I think that's a word. I don't know. Anyway, he knows his stuff, and he thinks deep about a lot of things. It's just a really cool chat that we have. So let's do it.
So my name is Vincent Venturella. I'm a miniature painter, hobbyist, YouTube content creator, for that that gross term. But no, like I like painting miniatures and often compete with them, stuff like that. I try to teach people how to take the next step on their hobby journey. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
All right, man. Super cool. All right. So, and my vocabulary is very limited, so I say super cool and all right lots of times because it's hard for me to think on the fly with better words. Okay, man. So I've been a pretty big fan of yours since I got back into the hobby a couple years ago, just finding new people and I used to do all this stuff 25 years ago, and I got back into it, and I was like, oh my gosh, look at all the stuff that's out there now on YouTube and everything else. But before we get started into the two topics that I do want to talk to you about, I have these questions I like to ask people they're sort of off topic, just to get some interesting things about you, some sort of pop culture-y things or whatever, right? So
Sure.
anything you don't want to answer, don't feel like you have to. We can, whatever, just feel comfortable, whatever. It's all laid back. I'll be editing this to make it palatable for release. So, there's all that kind of stuff too. So, all right. So first thing, these are pretty silly ones to start off with. Tell me what's one of your favorite foods or meals or type of food that you like?
Oh boy. I'm a very boring person when it comes to food. I don't eat anything that unusual. That being said, like a good oyster is a thing of beauty. If you can get it fresh somewhere where they catch it locally, get it to your plate, a little bit of lemon juice, and that's all you need. It is God's dessert on this earth. There used to be several billion oysters in the Hudson River, and they used to be actually like low-class street food that were sold out of little like what we would think of as hot dog carts in New York City. But they were so popular, and we ate so many of them that we literally and we polluted the heck out of the Hudson.
Right.
But between that and the fishing, we literally put them into extinction, and now they're trying to build them back, although it'll be a century before the water's safe enough for you to actually eat them, but at least they'll be there filtering the Hudson again. So
Wow.
There you go.
Wow. Yeah. That's, I can't do oysters. I like sushi and stuff, but yeah, I can't do oysters. And when you described the carts, it made me think of Arya in Game of Thrones.
Oh
When
yeah,
she's
sure.
doing her little assassin training. But man, yeah. Wow. That's pretty interesting. Okay. What do you like to drink while you're eating your oysters? Do you not drink alcohol, or do you have a favorite alcoholic beverage?
Yeah, I don't drink alcohol. I don't drink anything unusual. I cut out caffeine about 2 months ago, so now I drink basically just water and flavored waters, like a Vitamin Water Zero or a Sobe Life Water or something like that. I don't drink milk or tea or any kind of caffeine or juice. That's it.
Wow. All right.
I'm a very simple person.
Not even like, so when you cut out the caffeine, was that just, I don't want to get into like health issues or anything, but did you do that for health purposes or whatever? And were you drinking coffee or tea before that?
Nope, have never drank coffee, never drank tea. I was obsessed with soda, so I drank a lot of soda. Not like all diet soda, and I don't like the aspartame thing. Whatever, who cares? It was like whatever. There's a million things in life that are going to kill you. But no,
true.
it was just like the caffeine was sort of too much, and I was drinking a bit too much of it, and it was upsetting my stomach. I mean, I'll probably eventually go back to it, but for now, just healthier option. So there you go.
Yeah, nice. All right, man. That's very understandable. Yeah.
I'm a lot like a monk. I live like a monkish life. I just sit here and paint all day. That's
right.
me.
Your chapel is down there in your basement with your painting room, and that's all you need, right, to get through life. We're gonna get to some life philosophy towards the end of the show, but okay. So here's one of my favorite questions to ask. What is something you're interested in that isn't specifically tabletop gaming or miniature painting related?
Behavioral economics, behavioral psychology, philosophy, all that sort of thing. My degree is in philosophy, as well as I have a degree in philosophy and political science. I like that sort of thing a lot. I'm fascinated by the way humans really work. I'm fascinated by the fact that most of our problems aren't actually problems. We just don't bother to care what the right answers are, and bring most of our own doom upon ourselves, as is the way of humans. So I'm fascinated by what makes us tick.
Excellent. Wow. That's very interesting, man. So I don't know anything about that stuff, but I'm going to throw out a topic that you'll probably, a book that I read and I thought was very interesting, but probably has nothing to do with what you're talking about. But are you aware of Freakonomics, or the guys who wrote?
Oh, I listen to Freakonomics Weekly. Yes, absolutely.
Nice. All right. Yeah, I do find that very interesting. Wow. Man, that's super cool. Does that tie into your day job? I don't know what your day job is. You don't have to say.
Oh, my day job is so boring. I would put your listeners to sleep within moments of even mentioning it. No, I enjoy it. It has to do with insurance. I'm a software manager for a company, but it's a lot of fun. I really do like what I do, but it's probably not too exciting to those outside of the software or insurance industry.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. All right, man. Okay. So two more sort of pop culture things. Can you tell me, can you fire off a couple of your favorite movies?
Oh boy. See, this is such a this is the ultimate question, right? I am a big movie buff and a big movie enthusiast. There are tons of movies I like.
Oh man, all right.
Even naming a few would be highly challenging just because I would think of the other ones that I didn't name. Now, that all being said, sure, movies I can always go back to. Let's keep in nerd stuff, right? Because that's probably the audience. Obviously,
We don't care though. We don't care about that. It's fine, dude. Let me tell you this right before you start with your list.
Sure.
Most people I've asked this question to, I've found this trend over the last basically 12 or 15 people I've interviewed, and it's like as we progress into the future with all of this other media out there and just all these other distractions. I come from a very movie loving background as well, but I find that people more and more are like, especially like the younger they are, they don't have the answer to that question. They're like, well, I don't watch movies, or I don't know. The last movie I watched was, it's weird. So to have somebody who's still into movies and is willing to talk about them, dude, bring it on. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be nerd type movies. Whatever kind of movies you think are super cool that you would like to mention, I would be very interested in.
All right, sure. So let's see. Okay. I mean, obviously, we've got some all-time classics, the simple stuff that we would expect, Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and that kind of stuff. Duh. Those are great movies. They're wonderful genre movies. I absolutely love them. Same with like the first Batman, like Batman 89.
Yes.
But I would actually mark the best Batman movie as Batman Mask of the Phantasm, the animated series movie. There is no other Batman that is as good as that. That's the best portrayal of Batman on film, period, end of story. Beyond that, I really like a lot of, especially older movies, especially like thrillers, noir stuff. So Casablanca is one of my favorite films of all time. It is obviously still one of the AFI's top 100 movies. It's usually in the top 3, but like a lot of old Hitchcock, Vertigo, Rear Window, North by Northwest, all of that kind of stuff is fantastic. I've watched all of them multiple times and love them. When it comes to like horror movies, I really like I like horror movies that are more slow and paced and thoughtful, but also frightening. Halloween, the first Halloween, I consider to be like an absolute masterpiece of horror filmmaking. John Carpenter is and always will be a genius. Both of the first two Terminators, like Stan Winston is one of the greatest special effects artists of all time, and he did amazing jobs in all of that. I know those aren't horror, but like the first Terminator is kind of horror-ish. It has a horror-ish underpinning, right? And then the second one's an action movie. Same thing with Alien and Aliens. I like that. I like when the genres kind of switch like that. I thought those were both really fun. First RoboCop, obviously, is fantastic. All-time classic. Just that kind of like sarcasm that's in there about the world and what it's doing is so freaking good. Yeah.
Cool, man. All right. Yeah, those I identify with almost 100% of those, for sure, 100%. And I actually, when I got into film, my first job in the industry was doing special effects, and I got to work with a couple of guys that worked on the first Terminator film, and they would talk about how they did the miniature, the semi trailer that sort of blows up at the end and lights him on fire and burns all his skin off, and they were like, yeah, that's like stored out in the back of the building and it's got rained on, and they just let all these props just to do it. I was like, why?
It doesn't surprise me, but it's so terrible. Like that is just not a pleasant thing to hear. But from what I understand, like the first DeLorean from the first Back to the Future almost degraded to the point of no return.
Right.
Like it just sat on the Universal lot and no one cared about it. And I'm like, it's the original DeLorean. It's not even a car you can commonly get anymore. Right. And just no one cared. And eventually I think some fans actually got together and raised the money to restore it because Universal wasn't willing to do it.
Yeah.
Which is insane to me. Insane.
Yes. I totally get that. One of the coolest things I ever got to do, because I didn't work on a lot of cool movies or anything, but one of the cool things I did get to do is a friend of mine got a job when I got a job, but he got a job at Boss Films. And I walked over there to have lunch with him one day, and he's like, dude, check this out. And we walk into their big, the big shop, and we go into the back, and they've got some of the original miniature buildings from Blade Runner, like stapled to the wall, almost by the ceiling, like up there. I was like, dude, this is cool. Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty rad. Okay, man. How about books? Do you read a lot?
To be completely frank, I don't read a lot. I have in my life. I just don't have a lot of time to sit around and read much anymore. And when I do, it's generally nonfiction. But I mean, certainly I can give you plenty of books I have enjoyed over the time that I like to read. I mean, from like classics, Wuthering Heights is a great book.
Okay.
I've always enjoyed it. Depressing but wonderful. There's like I went through a period in high school where I read like, more or less all the sort of what we would consider the American canon, and most of that is not great. Honestly, I don't think it holds up super well anymore, but some of it does.
Sure.
And so there are books out of there like Great Gatsby. I really liked. Catcher in the Rye is obviously a pretty impactful book, and when you're a disgruntled Gen Xer in the early 90s and you read Catcher in the Rye, you're like, yeah, man, this is talking to me. So that was always fun. But like as far as books more sort of, again, like in genre, obviously I've read a fair number of fantasy related books. The original like Dragons trilogy by Weiss and Hickman, and then follow up with the Twins trilogy. That first Dragons book is so terrible if you haven't read it since you were young. Like if you go back and read as an adult, you're like, oh my God, this is not good, because they were writing it as they were playing the game. Right. And like it's described so as a GM, like so functionally, like that when they're exploring the temple where they get the like silver plates, which is that's all like a metaphor for Mormonism, by the way.
I had no idea.
Yeah, they have like a Mormon background. Like it's gold plates in Mormonism or whatever. Okay, like it's not. Yeah, so they just kind of integrated some elements of their religion. It's kind of cool to have like this real world element to it. But anyway, when they're doing that, they're like describing the halls, and they're like, the halls were 80 feet long by 5 feet wide, and 2 exits on the left. And I'm like, oh my God, this does not belong in a book. But they get better as they went on. I like all those. Brent Weeks is one of my favorite authors writing now. I really like his stuff. The Assassin trilogy is fantastic.
This next question, and this is the last one before we get into our actual tabletop gaming sort of topics. This might put you on the spot. You don't have to answer it or whatever. I'm curious to see what you say to it. Can you tell me
open book.
All right. Can you tell me about or describe one experience in your life that was truly impactful or powerful or mysterious, or just one thing that's happened in your life to you that affected you in a fundamental way?
Well, that's tough. It's hard to look back and see those individual moments, I suppose, because in the end, we're all the sort of sum of 1,000 little, micro interactions with people every day. And I think it's easy to overstate the big moments, unless you're like somebody like Saul and you're on the road to Damascus or something, right. And then all of a sudden you see Jesus in the light, I suppose. That might be, he'd probably list that one.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think so. For me, I can identify a particular moment where my life changed, and everything that I am now. I would not be married to my wife. I would not be in this hobby. I don't know where my life would be. It wouldn't, like, nothing would be the same had this not happened. And that is when my uncle, who I worked for, my whole family owned restaurants when I was younger, and I worked for my uncle as a busboy in his restaurant, and I worked for like $60 a week under the table because I was like 15, or no, I was 16 because I could drive. I was 16. I had my license, and I'm not worried. That restaurant doesn't exist, and my uncle passed away, so I'm not outing him. He's okay. Right. He's skating on this tax-free income. You're not getting him.
Right.
But anyway, so he fired me. I don't know why. He was not the nicest guy in the world. I didn't think I was a bad worker, but whatever. He fired me. And it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because I was working on, so this is like high school, obviously, you're 16 years old. And I was working on the weekends from basically 5 p.m. to about midnight. Okay. So everything I wanted to do, I couldn't do because it's Friday and Saturday night. Basically, I had no life. And I had a friend who invited me to come to this weekly Magic the Gathering league that was happening at the time. This is like 1993, 94, somewhere in there. And so Magic is like really just hit, you know what I mean? And like for those in the know, it was the biggest thing in the world, and it was just about to really explode. And there was a big league that like 30 people would show up at this person's house and play in every week. There was a big tournament every week, prizes, the whole deal, but I could never go. And this is a friend from high school. He said, you really need to come. So I got fired, and I said, hey, I can go now. So I went to that league, and it's where I met all the people who would become the friends that would shape who I am, that
Wow.
would convince me to seek graduating from high school early, which I ended up doing, that would direct me to like get into philosophy and political science and this kind of stuff, which is what I ended up majoring in, which got me into nerd gaming really, because they were who really got me. Like I had played some D&D before, but not really. But like they got me into what D&D could really be, what Magic could really be. Like just it was every element of my personality. I ended up meeting my wife through like mutual friends that happened along the way of those relationships, you know. So like everything that I am was because he decided to fire me. So
Wow.
that was nice.
Yeah. Dude, that's impressive. That's very interesting. Wow. Okay, and that's a perfect segue into what we're going to talk about today. So, man, yeah, that's pretty. The thing that's interesting to me about that whole is the whole political side, or the political science, or that philosophy side that came with all the gaming stuff. That's I wouldn't have expected any of that to come out of that. That's incredible, man. Wow.
All super nerds.
Yeah, very exactly right on, man. I wish I had known about graduating early. That was a thing from high school. I would have done that. I had no idea. That was I know that's a thing that people can do now, but there are a lot of things I didn't know back when I was in high school. I didn't know there was such a thing as film school. I had no idea.
Well, to be fair, there's a lot of things we all didn't know back in high school. That's why you're in high school at that moment, you know?
Sure, exactly right. Okay, man. So obviously, yes, you are an award-winning miniature painter. You've won Golden Demons, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Yes.
I've won a couple Golden Demons, Crystal Brush,
Yeah.
taken, Capital Palette and the Gen Con miniature hobby events, stuff like that. Yep.
Yeah. All right. And so, and you, your YouTube channel is all hobby based and Warhammer based. You know, you've got the Hobby Cheating series, the Warhammer Weekly Live broadcast, the monthly miniature review series, and Interview with an Artist series, all of which are fantastic and highly recommend. And of course, I'll put links to all these in the show notes. But that's not those aren't the topics I want to talk to you about, because that's all. Like, people can go on all your sites. That's what they're going to see from you all the time. What
Sure.
I'm interested in, of course, is I'm interested in Dungeons and Dragons and
Yes.
your interest in fostering the hobby community with generosity and constant support. So these are two different topics that I want to talk to you about. So
I'm ready.
Let's start with what is for me a little known side of you, Dungeons and Dragons. So I don't know how much you've talked about this in public or in videos I haven't seen or not. So this is what I think that I know about your involvement or engagement with the game. It sounds like you play fairly regularly. It sounds like you've done it for quite some time. And I'm curious, how true is that? And what edition do you currently play, if you're currently playing?
All right, so I'll ask you a question. Do you
Sure.
play 5e D&D?
I do currently, yes.
Okay. Do you have a player's handbook at hand?
I do on the shelf in front of me.
All right. Well, if you pull it down and open it up and flip to the second page, you'll see the list of consultants on the page of the people who helped contribute and shape 5th edition. And in that list, you'll see my name.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No. So I've been involved in writing role-playing games for a long time. I've written 6 of my own. The most recent was a system called the Narrative Game System, published back in 2014, 2015, something like that.
Wow.
And so that was self-funded through Kickstarter. It was successful. I was really happy to do it. It was sort of a culmination of a project I always wanted to make, which was to make something truly different and unique and truly narrative, and free people from the shackles of rules. That being said, I had been freelancing, and I wrote for some stuff for D&D going back to like 3rd edition. And when the opportunity to work on 5th came up, I talked to some folks there at Wizards and said, I'd love to be involved in the project. And so they brought me in as one of the sort of 8 consultants they hired early on. So from the very sort of first draft and stuff like that, we got copies and reviewed and, gave feedback and stuff like that. So it was a really, really rewarding process. And all the people who work on the game now, from every writer, every artist up to the top to Mike Merles and Jeremy Crawford, are all just the most amazing people who are generous and friendly and smart. They understand, I think, the heart of why the game matters. I don't know that the game has ever been in better hands, literally ever, from its inception to today. They have a respect for the past, but a knowledge of current game technology. We are all lucky, beyond lucky, that they are the people who are at the helm of this wonderful ship, because I do believe they've crafted something that is the perfect version of D&D. And I've played every edition of D&D since second edition regularly. I've had a weekly D&D game for the past 17 years, like ongoing single group. 18 years now. Sorry, started in 2001. And I mean, I played D&D quite regularly before that, starting in like basically 1989. So that was when but again, I didn't really know what I was doing until I met those other people, and they were like, oh no, here, let me show you how to actually play this game. Right. Like we can actually tell stories. It's not just killing monsters. Oh, okay. That's neat.
Wow. Dude, so first off, I have to apologize right off the bat because I had no idea, and you can tell already how professional I am and how good I am at my job here. So yeah, so I'm gonna shuffle some things around in my question list here, but that's I'm a little bit overwhelmed. That's super cool, man. Like, okay, so let's talk a little bit about. Man, I've got all kinds of questions now that are just different, but I got to start with my list. All right. So, okay, just talk to me a little bit about how you even discovered the game and what was your first exposure to D&D? Was it before your uncle fired you?
It was. Yeah. So my first exposure to D&D was honestly something that probably is not that uncommon. And what I mean by that is it was like just walking into Walden Books. Remember when there were bookstores in the mall?
Yes, I do.
And I would see these books on the shelf, and I was already kind of a nerd, and I was already into like fantasy stuff. When I was about 11 years old, I had taken a vacation and went with a friend of mine up to his aunt's house, who lived on a nice lake. And it was great. It was supposed to be this time where it was just, the two of us out doing nature stuff. So it was just me and my buddy, and his aunt was she was quadriplegic, and we were there helping her, and just like basically, but when she didn't need us, we were free to kind of roam and camp and fish and swim and boat and kayak and stuff. I mean, it was amazing. And 2 days into this like 8-day vacation that I took, I came down with like just a horrible flu. I was sick as a dog, like laid up in bed. And his aunt gave me The Hobbit to read, and she's like, well, you need something to keep you busy. They didn't have television because, again, this is like 89. It's not like satellite TV is a thing, right? And this is way out in the sticks. So she's like, well, you'll have to read a book. So here's The Hobbit. And she gave me The Hobbit, and I was like, I tore through the thing. I mean, I tore through it. It blew me away. I loved it. And then she said, all right, well, if you like that, here's the Fellowship of the Ring. And she said, you can take it home with you. And I still have that copy of the Fellowship to this day. And then I went and obviously got the other two books to complete the trilogy. I didn't just stop there and be like, oh, that's a weird place to end a story. I understood it was, one of 3 books. Right. And then so I would walk into the Walden Books, and they'd have this whole section of D&D books, and I would look at the covers and just think, man, this is just like what I read in that book, right? This is just like what I saw in The Hobbit, or just like what I saw in The Lord of the Rings. So eventually I just kind of built up the nerve and said, I went and found a guy, and I said, I want to buy these books. Is this one a good one to buy? And I had just some random adventure. And now, fortunately, because I just thought it had a cool cover, right? Fortunately, that guy at the bookstore happened to play D&D, or at least know enough about it to direct me. And he was like, no, you want to get this. So he gave me like the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master Guide. I don't think the Monster Manual had been collected yet, because the big like second edition massive tome
was the binder, right? The free leaf or whatever that you could put in a binder.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what it was for the first. I don't think the big collected tome came out until 92, so I think I bought that late. But he gave me something that had monsters in it.
And this is D&D second advanced AD&D second edition, right?
You got it. Yeah, the famous cover with like the Player's Handbook. So it's forever seared into my mind for 2 different art pieces. The cover with like the brown rocks, kind of like out in Utah sort of thing, and then the horseman like riding through the middle, like center frame on it. And then you would flip to the first splash page, and it was like the happy victorious party of like a couple fighters and a cleric and the wizard, and they're all standing around. There's this like baby worming dead dragon
hanging down from its feet, right? Yes.
Yeah, with a little treasure, like the treasure chest.
Yeah,
that they had all splitting the loot. I think
that's an Elmore, right? Elmore illustration. Larry Elmore, I think, did that one. You know what I liked about the Larry Elmore stuff was I really liked how he painted the gloves that people wore were always so tight. I
Sure.
don't know why I liked it. I was like, those gloves look rad. Like you could do stuff in those gloves, like pick locks and things. But I could never find a pair of gloves that was as tight as the ones that he would paint.
Absolutely. And, he's still a great artist. He's still working. Like if you go to Gen Con, he's still there every year.
Wow.
You can go and buy prints from him. He'll sign them. He is such a nice guy. At least every interaction I've ever had with him. I don't know him personally. I've talked to him obviously at the conventions, but
Sure.
He was never anything but just the nicest person when I've talked to him in person there.
Very cool, man. Wow. So yeah, that's the edition of the game that I got into as well back in 87, 88. That's when I got into it. And 89 is when I played it a lot. Now I want to ask you this one question because I know I saw on your Facebook page you have attended is it a Catholic high school
I did. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And I attended
Catholic
Catholic school, not to high school, but up to like grade 8, and then I had to go to public school. I would have gone to a Catholic school had there been one around because my mom would have maybe do that. So I'm curious, my exposure to D&D is very different from everybody else. Not very different. I'm sure there's other people that had the same kind of thing, but I was not allowed to play D&D. But way back when I first encountered it, when I was like 10, my mom was like, "Oh, you can't. No, that's the demons and stuff. You can't do it." So
sure.
You didn't have any of that issue?
Oh, the classic satanic panic of the 80s. Yes, these kids today not knowing what it was like. The moral outrage. So will someone think of the children? No, of course, that was like partially on the radar. Like, I had to have that discussion with, with my mom. But fortunately, my mom she's a pretty cool person. And in the end, she came down to like, okay, this, my son isn't a Satan worshiper. Like she knew me in the end,
right.
And that I wasn't going to be involved in anything stupid. And so was like, okay, but you be careful. I'm like, all right, like I don't know what that means, but sure.
Be careful when you're summoning those spells.
I'll watch out for the devil or whatever you think is going to happen.
That's the title of this show. I will watch out for the devil.
There you go. But at any rate, so I got a little bit of that, but she was pretty accepting. So it was good. On the whole, it was a little bit of a discussion, but it went to bed pretty fast.
Sure. Nice.
But yes, that satanic panic was a big deal.
Yes. Yeah. I remember. Yeah, you're right. Like people today, they don't quite understand exactly what that was like to live through, I suppose, when you're trying to be part of that whole scene or whatever. But so you've been playing for so long with the same group or very close to the same group. Are you primarily a player or are you primarily a dungeon master?
Yeah, these days it's really primarily a player in our normal games. So here's how we play D&D. So we have our normal weekly game. And honestly, at this point, it's been a long time. One of the challenges I have with fantasy at this point is that, and one of the reasons I don't read a lot of like fantasy novels or something is because, to be completely honest, I find them absolutely boring. It's just like the world of stock fantasy has just ceased being interesting to me in a lot of cases. Like I've played so many games in the Forgotten Realms, experienced so many of the tropes and so many of just like everything that's standard. It's hard. It's hard for me to be like, yes, I am excited to go do this same stuff again. So like I like being a player because in the end you get to tell an individual character story, and usually there'll be some interesting games and you can have interesting interactions, and in the end the character matters a lot more than the plot. But as a GM, I just haven't been inspired to tell an individual story for a long time. That is to say, to write a television show, because running a D&D campaign in a weekly game is like being a showrunner for a television show, right? You have to think of a new plot week to week, and everything has to tie together and all this kind of stuff. You got seasons and things like that. However, we also play D&D in marathon form. So about 3 or 4 times a year, we will get together and play a D&D marathon. Now, that is a totally different experience. We will literally get about 6 or 7 people together, players. We'll run for about 4 days. We'll do 12 to 16 hours a day.
Whoa. Okay.
And that I love running because that is the chance to write a movie, not a television show. Right?
So it's finite. You guys run this through the marathon run of days, but that's the beginning and the end of that particular campaign, so to speak?
You got it. That is the whole story. Now, when we've been doing this now for almost 11 years. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
And when we started with this method, we were just doing a lot of one-offs, right? Like somebody would write a new little campaign world or something like that, or we'd use an existing world or whatever. And we would tell a story and then that was done. And then I started to realize, actually, well, if we're going to write movies, I could actually write some trilogies. So like the first trilogy I did was a Musketeers game. So it was set in 1630s France. They were replacing the role of the Musketeers. I've always loved sort of the Musketeers and that kind of stuff,
dude.
but it was like it was magical France, but not high magic. Like there, but it was a magical D&D world, but France, and like everything was real, everything was period appropriate. They were antagonistic with Richelieu, and they served the king, and one of them slept with the queen, and you know all the standard fun stuff you would imagine happened. And they were stopping a plot to overthrow the French throne. Standard Musketeer stuff. And so I ran a whole trilogy there in that, like 3 marathon games, and did that. And then since then, we've continued expanding it. We've actually added another game. So I've run one in the Mech Warrior world. I've run one in the current longest form game I'm running in these movie format is a Rifts game. I'm basically doing my Marvel Cinematic Universe, building them up toward Thanos and sort of the end game, or the Infinity War, as it were, over many, many games. So we're about 9 marathons into this world at this point.
Oh,
like
wow.
it's full on.
And is it actually superhero? Is that what they're playing? Like the equivalent of superheroes in a modern world, contemporary setting?
Well, in Rifts, all characters are basically
that's right.
superheroes.
Right,
so,
right. Yeah, Rifts. Yeah, okay. That's right. I never played Rifts. I always saw the books, and there's always something that it bothered me about Rifts. Me just my personal aesthetic. I didn't like at that point like mixing genres. Like, I don't want to like mix things like that. But I haven't played an iota compared to how you've played, so I can see how expanding and getting new and interesting things in would be much needed, I suppose. So
yeah, and just a quick let me just drill in on
Sure.
that genre mixing for just a second, because it's an area of chief interest to me. So I've become a large fan of the idea of sort of mixing genres when it's doing something interesting, when you're not doing it just to do it. Does that make sense? Like just saying I'm going to mix genres because if that's the premise you start from, that's a failed premise right away. If you start from, I want to tell this interesting story, and doing it in the He-Man world where you've got laser guns going up against swords is the way to do it, then that's cool. Like the current D&D game I'm running is set, or not running, sorry, playing in. My friend is running it, is set in 1870s magical New York, where there's no America and only like the eastern states are the US, and it's the Civil War, instead of being what it was a fight between royalists, and there was never a revolution. It's a fight between royalists and magicians, and the magicians won.
Wow.
And we're all teenagers. So like everybody in the party had to be between 11 and 14 years old. And we all went to like the story was focused at the beginning around American Hogwarts. And
right. Okay.
It's the best way to talk about it. Like we all had to go to school and learn magic, and every character at the table is a wizard. So it's 7 people playing. There's one sorcerer, and she's the weirdo of the bunch, and she's sort of an unexplained phenomena in the world that we have to keep secret, or they'll take her and put her on a slab and dissect her to figure out what makes her tick.
Right.
And it's full of every horrible trope you can ever imagine. It is like, and I don't mean trope like bad. I mean horror.
Right. I see. Yes.
It is actually a horror game, and horror games are way more interesting when you are a child protagonist. Wow. Because as an adult, you can be tough, and you can act like, oh, no big deal. You can be one of those people. But like when you're legitimately playing a 12-year-old, are you afraid of the dark, or what goes bump in the night is scary, right? If you're going to actually role play that, then you are afraid, because the world is big and scary and beyond you, and adults don't listen, and people don't care, especially not in the 1870s.
Right.
And it just makes for such a fascinating game. Like, so it's that's the kind of genre mix up where there's modern world, there's firearms, there's a proto mafia and stuff we have to fight against, and cabals and fey incursions, and it's great.
Wow. Yeah, that is spectacular. That's super cool. It's so weird. Just the last couple of days, I don't even know what I was thinking about. But the vague notion, I was wondering, like, I was like, could you play a game where you played kids like that? I don't know why I was thinking of that, but it never in any sort of concrete form. But it's very interesting that you bring it up, that you guys actually play a full game like that with characters from that perspective. And so I take it that you guys are it's a fairly hardcore sort of, a lot of times people play D&D games where there's sort of a silliness factor that kind of goes over the top. Like, I don't care for those kinds of games. It's where, you know, it's a lot, like, too much comedy to me just makes it too slapstick. And I'd rather play something that's has a little more gravity to it. And I get the feeling this is kind of what you guys are kind of doing. I'm sure there's always comedy in games, but you guys are treating this like a serious sort of horror adventure kind of a thing. And,
absolutely. Yes, wow. 100%. It's the trick that, like, because many members of this group, it's not the exact same group we started with 18 years ago, although there are 2 people who are original, but the whole group has been together for, I mean, we've all been gaming together for probably at least a decade. And so there's no ego. You know, people can be emotionally vulnerable, which is actually really important in sort of this world of, like, to really get and do some amazing role playing. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to see your character, to see your friends suffer, and you have to really exist in that space where you feel the character's pain and you're willing to be vulnerable in front of other human beings. And I'm lucky that we're in a group where that is the case, because we've all been together for so long that there's no more concern about, oh, what are people going to think about me, or I couldn't act like that. That's too silly.
Right.
That's never a point of discussion.
Man, that's very cool. Yeah, there's something I've noticed in myself, a change, you know, sort of like from when I was, you know, as a teenager or, you know, late teens, early 20s into the game. I was always like, you know, well, I want to make a cool character, and I got to make sure, you know, roll, you know, when you do the character creation, you roll those 4 dice and, you know, get your 4 success, you create all the stats, and you're always like, well, I'm going to stack all my stats, you know, I play a thief, so I want to make sure my dexterity is super high and all this stuff. Now, when I think about playing the game, I actually relish the idea of, like, for example, this isn't like a specific thing, but like this is just to illustrate what I'm talking about. I really relish this idea of, like, okay, I'm going to roll the stats and I'm going to play a character who's like sort of a thief, but maybe I'm not going to put that 17 I rolled in his dexterity. I'm going to put the 10 in his dexterity, and his 17 goes somewhere else. Cause it's like, you know, when you're young and you play this game, you sort of do the min-maxing thing. And a lot of people still do that, and they like that. But I am really liking the idea of what you're kind of pointing out and talking about, is the idea of, like, well, let's play with the actual shortcomings and humanity, or, you know, whatever, you know, you can have elves and dwarves, whatever, you know, the characterness of somebody. Like, okay, this guy isn't super strong, but he's still was a mercenary, and he grew up and he knows how to fight, but he can't pick up a big sword, you know, or he can't run. I don't know. There's just something about playing with actual limitations that makes it more dramatic and a lot more interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll say 2 things to that. One, we actually use a pretty different stat generation. So, like, we still roll dice. We don't ever use a matrix. I would never use, like, the point buy or a matrix or anything. I don't care for that at all. I like the randomness of it. We all do. Second, we actually use a modified method of the original Gygaxian Unearthed Arcana, like the first edition one. I don't know if you ever looked at that.
Yeah.
But he had talked about, like, it was in one of the appendices where he talked about how the way that he liked his characters to generate stats was, like, if you're a fighter, you roll like 96 for strength and take the best 3, and like 76 for con, and 66 for dex, and 46 for wisdom, and then 3d6 for the other 2. And so it creates this sort of natural spread. Now, what we did is we took that and modified that into a set of 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 3. And that's, so you generally will have one pretty out of the box score, right? Like, almost statistically, you're very likely to have a 16, 17, or 18 when you're rolling 8d6 and taking the best 3, right? Yeah. But what that's done is make it so we get rid of the variance where, like, or it lessens the variance of, like, one person getting just ultra bad luck, because we've all sat at that table. And we're not driven by stats as much anymore, but at the same time, it is kind of unfortunate when you see somebody just have the feel bads, you know, because you look over and, like, everybody else got a nice stat using, like, say, the traditional method, and they're the one person who ended up with, like, a 14. Right.
A bunch of 12s.
And then everything else is 10s. And you're like, oh, man, like, we felt bad for that person. This freed us to not care about that stuff, because our characters generally are underpinned by pretty decent stats. So we have then the freedom to, like, take our character in interesting directions. Proof positive of that, you mentioned the dex thing with the thief. We're all wizards, my wizard has a 14 intelligence, but at this point with the level we're at, I have like a 20 strength and a 20 con. Like I am a fighter.
Right.
I am a brawler. Everything has gone into every sort of advancement and bonus I've got has gone into strength and constitution. Like I am a dock worker who didn't want to be a wizard. Like I was drafted into this life. I hate it, you know? Wow. And like, I don't like being a wizard. I think wizards are little nerds who deserve to be punched. And, you know, like my character is just not, he doesn't fit that mold. And I'm not smart. I rely on the other characters to do smart things. But I distinguish myself in the wizard party by being somebody who can lift heavy things, which nobody else can, you know, and it's just fun because like it is orthogonal. I'm not a good wizard in the wizard game, but I have a fun character in the wizard game, right? So when all the like wizard oriented challenges come up, I'm like, all right, guys, I'm moral support. I'm here for you. We can do it.
When you need me to break down that wall, I'm here. I'm ready.
Exactly. But when like, yeah, you feel like you've got a role. And I think that's the interesting, relevant part, right? You don't necessarily need to have like these best stats. You just need to feel like you kind of have a place in your group and like you belong. And I think if the characters are all, if the players are all on a wavelength, they can talk beforehand and establish that sort of contract to make sure that that's happening, and everybody will feel like they have some kind of place in the family, right? And that's what makes a good group. By the way, that can include some conflict, which is great. Of course,
yeah, that's true. So I have about 5 questions I want to ask at once, but I'm gonna go on one real quick here. So, so your interest in social economics or in human beings, right? Your philosophies and you're interested in that. How do you think that relates to, or what do you feel the game D&D and role-playing games, like, do you feel that like these groups that we create and these stories we're telling, do those reflect real, you know, regular human interactions? Do they, it's too vague in my head, dude. I'm sorry. I'm trying to sum up this question, but I'm just curious, like, from your perspective, how does RPGs, how do they relate to real life? And what do you think people get out of them, out of the plane of the games?
A lot of things. So let me say, I think that game design is economics. Okay. What I mean by that is you have to understand behavioral psychology to some degree to be a good game designer, because game design is a matter of structuring incentives and, you know, sort of bonuses, penalties, pluses, minuses, things that will make people make decisions. And you have to understand what drives humans' decisions, what humans find annoying, what humans find comforting, what they find appealing, what they find painful. You have to understand all the biases and sort of ticks and oddities of humans to be a good game designer. So I think that's number one. Now, the deeper question you asked there of like, what are we all doing? Like, what are we on about here? Right. I think that the growth of D&D, especially like it's been the biggest. D&D for a long, long time had 2 banner years, and that was 1983 and 2002. And those were the years after they released a sort of new big edition of the product, right? Like 83 was the sort of unified boxes, and 2002 was when 3rd edition hit its height, right? And it was all new product driven, and that's it. And then when the product would dry up, the interest would wane, right? And even then, you'd see them get on the cycle. If you've never read Ryan Dancy's article about taking over the Wizards of the TSR office, when they bought out TSR, it's an incredible read. Dancy is a wonderful, interesting dude, and he has really great insights. The most dangerous man in gaming was his moniker, and he was a good friend and a really nice guy. When they went in there to take over, it was pallets and pallets of 2nd edition books and boxes that had never been shipped anywhere. They had just been printed and were sitting there, just a warehouse full of them, because they had printed themselves into bankruptcy, because they were trying to keep on the treadmill. What's fascinating about the most recent expansion of D&D is it's not product related. I mean, it is. There's a great product underpinning it. But what I mean is, like, what player-focused supplements has 5th edition really released? Maybe like the Sword Coast Guide, you know what I mean? Like, it's just the Xanathar's Guide. That's probably about it, other than the original set. Everything else has been adventures right?
Yeah.
And everything else has been just articles. What's grown is this new world where we can stream stuff and we can have podcasts like this and we can all talk about it. And we've all realized that there's something amazing about being able to live in this other world, to be this other person, to express different elements of our personality in this safe space. It's the mental therapy that we all probably should have, but no one wants to pay to go to a therapist, right?
Right.
So instead, we get to work out our issues, sometimes by bashing orcs with maces, right? And sometimes by playing characters who have problems and challenges and setbacks, but where we can be strong and overcome them together, where we can work as a group and collaborate. I should also say that like the introduction of women coming out a lot bigger into role playing and being featured a lot more in these things is a huge deal, because that was a big part of the market that was very underserved. Like anybody who looks at a market and goes, well, you know, here's half the population we're not really marketing to. It doesn't take much of a business expert to go, well, there's no reason our product couldn't work for women. I think that what we're doing and why we've all come to be interested in it is because really from like the millennial generation on and here in the past 20 years, not only has sort of nerd culture become less stigmatized, you know, there's no satanic panic like you mentioned when we were kids, right? But in addition, it's become not just cool or fun or okay. That's all true, but that's not enough to make people do something other than have a passing fad, right?
Yeah.
It's become a way to connect to people in a physical, real way, which is ironic since we're making up things constantly, right? And in the game, that is very different from the modern social landscape, where a lot of our connections are transactional, transitory, digital. You know what I mean? Like you and I right now are talking, and this is a great conversation, but like it could be that I hang up this phone and you and I never speak again in our life, right? Like that's a possibility. Okay. Sure. By the way, that's not me saying I wouldn't love to come back on the show sometime. I'm just saying like that's kind of the nature
I get
of the world, you know? But in the alternative to that, this is something very real, right? It lets us explore parts of ourselves with our friends in ways that there's no other way to do it. There is no other experience like this. I think what the rest of society has finally cottoned on to is what we knew all along.
Right.
That that humans love using their imagination and love telling stories, right? I mean, stories are the most critical element of the human race going back to our earliest ancestors, right?
Yes.
And so it's not surprising that this has empowered us to tell stories in a new way in this world. So, yeah, I think all of those things.
Nice, man. How do you think the advent, this sounds dumb, but the advent of the internet, right? How is the modern technology, like, is it, okay, so you brought up all these points about when you play the game and you're having this experience with this group of people. And so I'm wondering, like, do you feel that's the same? The effects are the same when people play, say, play online together when they have like it's all done through video conference, like on Roll20 or something. Are they able to achieve that same sort of social effect when they're not in the same room together?
No.
What do you think about that?
No, they are not.
Okay.
Like, I'll give the hard answer.
Sure.
No, but it's still pretty close.
Okay.
And it's not bad. Right. So my point is, like, there's nothing wrong with Roll20. I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome that people can connect like that. The internet has had a lot of negative externalities, but this is I think role-playing games are one of the few places where it's been almost completely positive, other than there's some negative elements out there, but it's much more good than bad. It's helped people to find each other. You look at apps like Game4 out there, right? Mm-hmm. Where you can log on and say, I want to play a D&D game. Anybody in my area? And boom, you can find players, right? That's amazing. That's like that is so much better than the bulletin board we grew up with, right? The local game store.
Right.
Is the like Roll20 experience the same? No, because when you have a group of people you get together with and you sit in a room with and have physical contact with, there is a difference. You are in a physical space with someone where you notice minor cues of their body language, where you can have asides. One of the most intimate role-playing experiences I ever had, and I don't mean intimate in like a romantic way, I just mean intimate, emotional, came about in a conversation between in what is still one of those ongoing marathon games my favorite character I've ever played, which is this paladin. I'm not going to go into detail, but I love him more than any character I've ever played. And I keep a list of every character I played since I started in 1989.
Nice.
And there was a whole thing going on with part of the group. The GM was working with them. And myself and this other character got to get, we're there alone. We weren't in the scene. And so we had stepped aside and just in character had this emotional, deep conversation about everything we had experienced and the suffering and what needed to change and the moves that he needed to make in his life. And it felt as real and impactful as any similar conversation I've had with a person in real life, where you've got a friend who's breaking down and you're trying to help them through a tough time. That would be almost impossible to do over something digital, right? Because he and I were able to sit to the side together to whisper, to like shake each other's hand. I was able to put my hand on his back and clasp his back, right? And there's like to do that physical touch thing that helped solidify the emotion of the scene, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't thinking about all that at the time because I was like, it was
you're just playing the game.
method scene. I was in character, right? But looking back after I was done, I was like, whoa. Like sometimes you'll come up, like it's almost like surfacing when you're underwater for a while, right? You're like, you take a breath and you're like, whoa, we were deep there,
Yeah.
But it's still good. It's better than nothing. That's
right,
what I'll say. It is a heck of a lot better than nothing. And it's awesome that it's allowing people who don't have friends near them to play or the opportunity to actually get games in. So that's wonderful.
When you run a game or when you guys play, when you're playing, do you guys use miniatures or do you do everything theater of the mind?
Oh, God, no. Theater of the mind, 100%. I get those miniatures away from my table.
Wow.
I paint miniatures all day and every day and love them, and they don't belong anywhere near my D&D table. Miniatures draw you out of role-playing. I do not understand the use of them. They are mind-boggling to me. The point of this game is to tell stories and to role-play, interacting with physical things, moving around. You will not help but metagame because you will have a very clear conception of how far your character can move. You will know that you can step to this location and the monster will not be able to catch you because you have a move of 30 and they only move 20 or whatever, right? Whereas in the imagination space, if the GM wants to catch you with the monster, he will catch you with the monster because that is the more interesting thing for the scene to do at that moment. And there's just like, yes, once in a while, there will be a little bit of confusion of like, wait, who was where? And when that happens, my D&D room is all whiteboards. So I have 16 feet of whiteboards around the room, and then I have my table is a custom table that a friend of mine had made. That is the top of the table is an 8x4. The table is 8x4, and it's the whole top of it is dry erase. So you can draw everywhere. We can just draw everywhere. So if people get confused, we stand up, we do a quick little sketch of the scene with a dry erase marker, no grid, no nothing like that. Just say here's everybody's relative positions.
Right.
And then all confusion clears up and we continue with the scene, right?
Wow.
And it takes a few seconds. And no one is ever drawn out. No one has to stand up and be like, could you, no, just, no, other way. Move me 3 squares. 3 squares the other way. No, not that way. No, wait, I want to go back left 1. Move me like a knight, like a knight in chess.
Like a knight in chess. I want to jump over this, I want to go diagonal 2 squares. Come on. So, okay, that's pretty interesting, man. Yeah, dude, this is a awesome conversation, dude. You've had all sorts of answers and things that I have never heard before. For people that I talk to, this is fantastic. So now you had mentioned that you have written several, like basically rule sets or full games.
Yep. Full games. Yep.
And are those, I mean, like what kinds of games are those?
Yeah. So I did a couple and the early ones are bad.
Okay.
Because I didn't know what I was doing. I wrote my first one in 2004. It was a game called Future Lost. It was on the open game license because everything was on the open game license in 2004. That was how we wrote games.
Okay.
And which was like the 3rd edition OGL, right, where you could just do a thing. So I did like a cyberpunk game that was admittedly like a pretty derivative of Shadowrun. The idea was to do like a cyberpunk game that was more hardcore cyberpunk, like no Shadowrun style elves and dwarves and trolls and stuff like that.
Just straight like, cyberpunk, yeah.
More straight cyberpunk, yeah. More Neuromancer, more something like that, right?
Yeah.
But it was still derivative and it was bad and poorly written and poorly edited. So but it was learning.
Yes.
But it was written. Learning. I wrote a like 250-page game book and it was like it was a heck of a learning experience,
Yeah.
Then I wrote a superhero game called To Be a Hero. It was better. Still bad, but better. Learning stuff. that was kind of the superhero game I always wanted, but like there were elements of the game design that I hadn't cottoned to yet. I wrote the next one that I wrote it was in response to I had been playing 4th edition and I was sick of it and didn't like it. And I wanted to write a new fantasy game that I thought would be more basically what 5th edition was trying to do. I did twice.
Oh, okay.
I wrote a game called Legacy of Heroes, and then I didn't like it, and I rewrote it into a thing called Second Legacy. Okay. And so I put 2 different versions of that out, both of which were basically trying to do what 5th edition was doing, which is to synergize every version of D&D into the best version of itself.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Because I would say 5th edition borrowed all the best lessons and then combined them with modern game design, right? Of simplification and theory and stuff like that. So I was trying to do that with both of them, and whatever. Then they published 5th edition, and obviously that's better. So whatever.
They had a staff. It's okay, man.
And there was a couple expansions I published for those in there that happened, like little expansion books. And then there was the sort of the magnum opus or whatever, which is NGS. If you ever watch any of my videos, the big poster that sits behind me with like the cowboy,
yes, I wondered what that was.
That's the game. That's the cover we printed for like some marketing and stuff when I went and did some trade shows and conventions and stuff.
Okay.
That is a giant poster, and it's NGS, the narrative game system. That is not bad. I am very proud of that game to this day. I love the game. I love what we were able to do with it. It is truly a narratively story-driven game. It is very abstract. It very much relies on the power of storyteller. It's very much like empowering the PCs to be active participants. The elements of it that we did around like character generation we still use for every D&D game to this day, because it has like the concept of collaborative character generation. So I'll just quickly describe this because I think this is actually kind of fun. Here's the way we often generate characters. We do what we call collaborative character generation. So you start out, you write 100 words about your character, and that's it. It is hard capped. You are not allowed to cross 100 words, which is not many words.
No,
right?
Not at all. Yeah.
And then you sit down at the table together, and you read out your 100 words to the table. You might read it twice so that everybody catches it.
Sure.
And then going like around the room, everybody delivers a eulogy for you as though you just died.
Whoa.
Okay. And the reason we picked a eulogy as the means of conduction for this is because in a eulogy, everybody always puts a shine on things.
Right.
And everybody always shares a singular anecdote that they felt defined their relationship with the dead person. Right?
Yeah.
I remember we went to the this first Yankees game back in blah, 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 right? Whatever. Grandpa was a great guy, blah. Okay. So in other words, off that 100 words, everybody then goes around and treats your character as though they just died and tells a story about it. I remember when we were on an adventure and he said we should do this and I said we should do this. And then we got caught up by those bandits and we were tied up for 3 days in that canyon, whatever, right?
Yeah. And
then you jot down the relative story beats from the eulogy that they deliver as every character goes around and does it. And from that, you extract elements of your personality. You can integrate some of those things into your backstory of things that had happened. You're of course free to discard things if you feel that like somebody was off base or you don't like it. You're still your character. But it's amazing how many different times we've done this and people have just have been like, oh my God, I would have never thought of pushing the character in that direction. And it's a revelation, right? So it's just a fun way to collaboratively character generate. And then you just repeat for everybody at the table.
Sure. This is fascinating. So this is something you came up with for the NGS game system?
Yeah. Yep, that's correct.
How did you, this is a dumb thing to ask writers and content creators, of course, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How did you come up with that idea?
Sure. I have to be honest, I don't know. Like I was thinking about this thing and I had a collaborator on the project and he and I were just talking about it one day and one of us said we were going through how we'd want it to be done. And I said, well, what if it was a eulogy? Right. And we kind of and so we threw around the idea and it just seemed like the thing. So we kind of sketched out some ideas and gave it some test runs and it was awesome. Yeah. So it just became the thing.
That is very, very cool. That's, yeah, like you said, it is super interesting, and it sounds like an excellent way to create characters. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just going off. Like
No, you're fine.
You could do all kinds of stuff with that. I mean, that's really interesting. Wow. Okay, man. So, and I'm just curious, like, where do you actually market that book through, or the rule book for NGS? Does people buy that on like website somewhere, or?
Yep. Yeah. So you can buy it from like RPG. Yeah, like Drive Through RPG, sure. And you can from my website directly, which hooks through to that, which is just Ventureland Games, is all like has all the NGS focused stuff on it.
This is how terrible I am, dude. I didn't even know you had a website called.
No, it's okay. I don't talk about this stuff much because I don't. It's not really where I'm at right now in my hobby or in my career. But it's out there, and I'm very proud of the game. But I'm not actively trying to sell it. But if people are curious, they can find everything at Ventureland Games, all one thing, .com, or you can Drive Through RPG. The book is there.
All right, man. So you've written some game systems, you've written some adventures for D&D 5e, or just other game, for D&D games, right? Some expansions or whatever. So just a quick question: do you ever plan to write like an actual piece of literature, like a novel or something like that? Is that something that's on your radar?
Not really. I've never found the principle that interesting. I don't think I have that kind of storytelling in me, which might sound strange to people. I don't know, but it's just I don't know. Never been a thing that's appealed to me.
Sure. So, okay. I
think I also write stunted dialogue when I have to do it, when I'm translating it to the page. When I'm acting it, I can do it. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference between acting it and writing it.
Absolutely.
Suppose.
So I was going to say, like, what about a screenplay? Have you ever considered writing a screenplay? Because a screenplay is like a blueprint. So
sure. Oh yeah, I did write a screenplay. So I wrote a whole screenplay back in 2001. Do you remember Project Greenlight? Do you remember when that thing?
Absolutely. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yes. So I wrote a screenplay for that, like so many people did, and it was bad. But with the humorous part was I kind of wrote it out and I gave it to my wife, was just my girlfriend at the time, and I gave it to her, and she said, "Do you know you use the F word 137 times in the first 10 pages of this?" And I was like, "Yeah." What's your point? And so, that's probably not great writing right there. Like, it's okay to curse. Are you kidding?
That's just advertising right there, man.
Sure, probably a bit excessive. But at any rate, no, I mean, it was pretty derivative stuff, sure, to be completely frank.
I get it. No, like it's the first one, whatever. Yeah, I was just curious if you ever thought about that. So I am curious about how have you heard the term the pantsers versus plotters?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm curious, when you create, not the game systems, because that's sort of technical, but when you do these expansions, or when you create your campaigns for the marathon, the marathon D&D sessions, do you consider yourself a pantser or a plotter?
Yeah, so I think the answer is you always have to be a little of both, right? Like it's a spectrum, of course. But when I write the marathons out, there's more of a plotter type of thing to it, because I have to write it out. You know what I mean? Like I have to know where the story goes, because I'm not going to have time to adjust. Right. I'm going to be GMing for 12 to 16 hours at a clip, and like things are going to move. And if you try to do all of that off the top of your head, you will exhaust yourself. Like you just can't fly by the seat of your pants that much. Right. And plus what I found is then when you're constantly trying to think about plot up in your head, you're using too many internal cycles to actually then bring characters to evocative life, right? And to throw in little nuance, like you're just without a net up there, right? So you're focused on nothing but grabbing that bar because you can't miss. So plotting it out, I actually set up my things in like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Here's the outline. Then I go and write the scenes, right? And then once it actually happens, I will then allow the seat of the pants changes to occur, right? Like I am very anti on rails. Like I've got a plot. Hopefully you'll kind of stick to it. I'll do my best to tell the story within that. But if you, as the players, have a more logical direction you're going, and this is seeming more appealing and the characters are involved, that's where we're going. Right.
Okay.
And maybe I'll just wait that night after I'm done and everybody goes to bed. I'll stay up for another hour or two and like, make some small tweaks to bring those elements into the story.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Okay. I identify with all of that, man. I personally would love to talk to you more about this D&D stuff and the writing and all this stuff, because it was like a tip of an iceberg when you told me that your name is in the D&D book. I'm like, okay. So it was all this stuff I didn't realize, but
you're fine.
Okay.
It's not a thing I talk about a lot because I don't want to be like that guy who's like, oh, my help do that.
No, sure.
Like that's not cool. So, it's something I'm very proud of, and it was the fulfillment of a lifelong dream, certainly. But like, out. I don't generally volunteer it unless sort of directly pressed like that.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's the purpose of this show then. Excellent. Okay. So this other topic that I wanted to talk to you about, and this is going to be probably a little off-putting for you, and you don't have to go with it or whatever, just because I can kind of tell what it's going to be like a little bit. I'm going to ask you about it anyway, because to me it's interesting, and it's this whole idea of, I wanted to kind of discuss some personal things about how you sort of look at the world and your life philosophies and things, insofar as how they have come to drive you to create not only your vast catalog of tutorials and stuff, but also just you have a general presence of being a supportive hobby guru kind of guy. Ignore the term guru, but because I don't want to put you on the spot like that. But what I mean is, every time I see you online, I mean, right off the bat, you did a live session today where it's hobby Q&A, and you answer people's questions about helping them out with a hobby. You do, I think, monthly, right, the live review of people's miniatures that they paint.
Right.
You literally look at you take time out of your day. You don't charge money for this. As far as I understand, you're not on Patreon or anything.
Nope.
You review people's, miniatures, and you give real world feedback. Every single time I've left just a little comment on a YouTube video, you're always so gracious, and you're just so, I don't know, man, you're so generous with your time. And I don't know, dude, how much do you believe in this notion of what comes around goes around? Like, what is this how do you foster this positive attitude, and what makes you kind of, what gives you the drive to do the things that you do for the hobby and for other people?
Sure. I think there's probably a multitude of responses there, right? Look, I mean, some part of it is probably, unfortunately, ego. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
When I was, like, one of my other favorite movies that I didn't mention was, oh God, now it flew out of my brain. Christian Slater, Pirate Radio.
Oh yeah, louder. Pump up the volume.
Pump up the volume. There you go. Thank you. Yes, God, I love the movie and the name.
Yeah.
My 19-year-old self would punch me in the face for forgetting that. But I always loved that movie, and when I was young, I watched. I was like, man, I want to do that. I want to be in that kind of radio. I want to have a voice, that kind of thing, right?
Right.
So, like, some part of it's certainly that, but it can't be just that. Otherwise, I'd be obsessed with like getting clicks or getting views or subs or stuff like that. I don't generally care about that stuff. Insofar as, at least, I like, those are only useful in that more people would be hopefully finding my stuff and it would be helping them. I think what motivates me is just I genuinely like teaching. It's fun. Like, I like sharing with people. I like seeing other people's hobby improve. I find this hobby so unbelievably rewarding. Like, painting miniatures is one of the great joys of my life. It's calming, it's fulfilling, it's artistic. It's something that I didn't even know was like a sort of hole in my being until I found it in a big way and got into it and joined this community. It's helped me to make friends, lifelong friends, real friends, people who I consider to be, somebody that I am so lucky and fortunate to know. I love art and being able to see other people's art. And if I can help other people achieve what they want to do in this hobby and find the same satisfaction and positivity in this element, then I think that's a huge win, because the reality is life can be full of a lot of tough stuff, regardless of where you are or who you are or, whatever your background. Everybody has their challenges, but this is one area where we can all come together and we can all share in this communal artistic pursuit that is both a game that we can play, but it's an art that we can share. It's creativity lets us express ourselves. It's wonderful on so many different levels, and it just hits so many different things. I'm just driven to do it. Like it's part of me is this is the sort of manufactured conscious mind explanation, right? Like the real answer to your question is I have no idea, because the subconscious mind is 200,000 times more processing power than your conscious mind, and it's actually driving. It's just tricked your conscious mind into thinking you're in charge, right? And so, this is probably a fabricated explanation, but it's as close as I can get. This is as close as I can get to sort of looking in the black box of my mind and understanding why. I just know I find it very fulfilling. When I was younger, I had thought a lot about being a teacher, but I don't like to get up early, so that counted that out. I still don't. Like, I don't have that circadian rhythm. I'm a night person, Sure. I like to stay up late. I sleep in. So, like, I'm not getting up and going to teach, get up at like 6, 7 in the morning. No, can't do that. But I love teaching. I've always loved sharing with people and seeing that response. And I feel like I am lucky in my life. I've been lucky in the things I've managed to accomplish. None of that stuff I've accomplished alone. Zero of any success in my life did I accomplish alone. No man is an island, and me least of which. I have been fortunate since I was young to be, to have loving parents, to find a spouse who supports me and loves me, to have friends who are great and who support me, and anything I can do to pay that back into the universe. I don't think karma is a thing. If it is, it really sucks, because there's a lot of really terrible people who are doing pretty well in the world. But I don't care about any of that. I don't need it to be metaphysical or supernatural or spiritual. It can just be society. Like, we all are a communal species, and I believe in just putting out positivity and trying to help, because so many people have helped me. I don't see it as like me being overtly nice. I just see it as the responsibility I have to try to share the same thing with everybody as a member of this community or the human race, right? Like, we all have to help each other.
Nice, man. All right. Well, that sums that up really well. And I thank you for even attempting to do that, because I know it's kind of a bogus question to ask somebody, but I appreciate the answer. I think it's well thought out, and you're right. I mean, you can't necessarily, your subconscious drives you to do certain things, but, well, at any rate, I personally want to thank you for the way that you conduct yourself online, the way that you produce content, and for the way that you interact with people. I just think it's wonderful. I think it's great, and you're much appreciated. And I know everybody else out there feels probably very similar. That'll kind of wrap it up for us today, man. I do have 2 suggestions for you as far as content to consume.
Oh, I'm ready. Yeah.
You may have heard of these or seen these or whatever, but you're talking about the your appreciation of sort of the Three Musketeers and that sort of thing. I really enjoy those as well. This movie popped in my head when you were talking about that. It has nothing to do with the Three Musketeers. It has nothing to do with France. But I just happened to watch this film a couple weeks ago, and I was like, man, I don't know, you might dig this. It's called The Favorite, and it stars Rachel Weisz, I think. Rachel Weisz, whatever her name is. Anyway, it's an interesting, it's sort of set in, I don't know, 1700s, 1800s. It's in England, and it's just... I don't know why.
It just
I
know
popped
this.
in my head.
This was like, yeah, I know it. I haven't seen it, but yes, it was on my list. Yeah.
I was surprised by it, and I actually really enjoyed it, and for some reason it felt like something you might get a kick out of. Then the other thing is a book called Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which there is a BBC televised, like a miniseries. It's on Netflix, I think. But yeah, I'm just going to throw out either watching the Netflix series or the book, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I think it might resonate with you. It may not, but I get this feeling that, I don't know, just check it out if you get a chance, whatever. Anyway, I just throwing them out there, a couple of suggestions.
Oh, no, I love that book. It's great. My wife actually introduced me to it. So there
excellent. You go. All right. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Well, at least
it's short, too.
Yeah, it's tiny. Yes. And I actually read that in book format, not ebook format. I was like, this is a good book right here. But no, it was good. It was, I remember reading it in the language. I don't typically like the old school stuff. Like, I can't get through a lot of that because of the old writing style or whatever. And I just don't put in the effort, like I can't do Shakespeare unless it's almost like I have to be stoned to parse Shakespeare when I'm watching it.
Sure.
And, but yeah, Jonathan Strange, I was like, I don't know, it captured me, and I read the whole thing in a couple of weeks. I was like, I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Yeah, man. Thank you, dude. I appreciate it.
Hey, happy to. This was a lot of fun.
All right. Super cool, man. All right. Well, have a great weekend, and hopefully what you said before won't be true, and I'll be able to talk to you again soon.
100%. Reach out anytime, man. This was a lot of fun, really.
All right, man. Take care, dude. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Bye.